Hello, everybody. Welcome to With Thunderous Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to discuss the events and ideas that'll shape our uncertain future and various other related subjects. I am your host, Steve, along with my co-host, Zach. What is up?
Nothing much. Driving through the mountains sucks. Camping is at best.
Went camping last weekend, got to see each other in the meat space. That was fun.
Yeah.
Really the highlight, other than like getting to go to the gun range, I was thinking back on it today. I think the highlight was really those bacon wrapped hot dogs with barbecue sauce.
I had
I don't
two
know
of them.
what about it. It was just like the perfect camping meal. It was all
Yeah.
smoky.
Yeah.
The bacon was all smoky and shit was fucking delicious.
I had two of them. They were giving me shit about the crawdads, and I'm like, I didn't know there were going to be like crawdads when we started this whole adventure. So I was like stoked on hot dogs.
Yeah. I just, for me, a lot of it is like I don't feel like I've properly washed. I'm trying to wash my hands, right, when I need to wash my hands.
Dude.
But I did not feel like I had the appropriate amount of cleanliness on my hands, and I did not want to eat with my fucking hand. I mean, I guess.
Oh, good call. Good call. Yeah.
I guess I ate a hot dog with my hands, but that's different than like.
Well, you're mixing
like,
water in with
your fucking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're mixing water. There's a lot that goes on with your fingernails when you're doing that. It's way more opportunity for things to transfer from your hands to the food you're eating. Whereas, like, you hold a hot dog typically in three places.
A dry piece of bread.
Yeah.
And I wash my hands, but I just meant like I didn't feel like even had I ate them, I don't feel like I would have been able to get myself clean enough after.
My hands don't feel clean right now. I have taken 2 showers. I have washed them.
Yeah, I've showered twice since then. Within like 40 minutes of getting home.
Yeah.
Like I unpacked everything because I knew I'd get all fucking sweaty and shit.
Yeah.
I unpacked everything and then fucking showered. Yeah.
Yeah.
At any rate, let's not spend too much time talking about that.
Yeah.
But we did go for a very nice drive.
Yes.
And we went from Chico, cut over through like Oroville and through the foothills of the Sierra there.
Mm-hmm.
And then hit Highway 49.
And then Logging Road 12 or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah, and then a U.S. Forest Service Road 12.
Yeah.
For 17 miles of a very, a relatively, they called it an, what do they call it?
Improved road.
Improved road,
Yeah.
Paved road, improved road, and then high clearance road was the hierarchy of road conditions in that area.
So if you don't have a raised vehicle with at least like 6 inches of clearance, above the ground, do not try to drive those high clearance roads. You will get fucked up. We got lucky.
We've driven them in like a Subaru Outback, or Forester, not the Outback. The Forester sits a little higher, and it's not sufficient. Like I think you'd need to be more than that.
I was worried about the CRV making it.
What's that?
I said I was worried about the CRV making it because, like, if you look underneath it, it's not much more raised than a normal vehicle.
No, I don't think the CRV would have.
Yeah, only that truck would have made it. So it's a good thing.
And even Adam's truck could have probably done the gnarliest parts of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pickup. It's up off the ground, but like,
his isn't very raised. Yeah.
No. It's a pretty, but I like that truck a lot. I like little diesel pickups. It's hard to get those.
Yeah. Very hard.
And I mean, I guess if you have a really great job and you just, spend 35 grand on a truck.
You didn't happen to have time marks for the breaking points video, did you?
It's 0 to whatever I said.
Okay. I didn't see whatever you
said. Which was
3:29. Oh, was it a text message?
No. Hold on. Sorry, folks. We are shooting the Poodoo episode, I believe, 31 today.
31. We're shooting the fucking Poodoo on the fly right now. Single clip, 3 minutes. Okay. So, 0 to 3. That'll work.
It's about that. They talk about yachts. You'll see it.
Yeah.
It might be 2.5 or 3. I think I said 3.
Yeah.
Maybe 303 or something like that. Very cool. We're going to start with this clip. So getting into the show, it's Shooting the Poodoo episode 31. I'm going to talk a little bit, just a kind of interesting story about arms trading, again, with Ukraine and people getting rich, military industrial complex stuff. And then we just, since we were gone all weekend and I've been beat, like my sleep schedule's still all screwed up.
Man. I am so tired still. I'm so tired still. Like I got home and I don't know how else to describe it. I was I always come up with the same, description. I felt like my entire body was just vibrating, like I'm shaking, with nervous energy. When I finally get home after a long trip. Yeah,
Okay.
not great.
Yeah. At any rate, we're going to talk a little bit. We just pulled something from the wish list, basically.
Yeah.
And I put up an article. This seems pretty interesting. It's kind of about the. I don't think it goes into like the political consequences, but it looks at like weaning off of fossil fuels and the kind of economic
Yeah.
problems that causes. We always hear about climate change causing economic problems due to like disasters and of course ecological catastrophe. And I believe that business and jobs aren't what we should orient society towards.
Right.
Everybody has work to do, but we don't need fucking jobs. And anyway, it's an interesting kind of different way to look at why I believe it's virtually impossible to transition off of fossil fuels. It's not like that's why the system has to fucking collapse, is because there's like, you see something like this, you're like, oh yeah, you want to shut down that oil refinery? Well, like, how are you going to, like, what are you going to do about like an area that already has like 60% poverty rate? What are you going to do when that's 95%?
Yeah.
Right. Like,
right. And, the answer should be you take money from other parts of the country because we're all U.S. citizens and you divert it over to there. But that's just not how we run things.
Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit more in depth when we get there. And then, of course, we're going to finish off on Ahsoka because we were gone Thursday. Zach Baca forgot to put a community post up.
It's
but
true.
That's okay.
He actually reminded me in the morning. You know what I remembered instead of that was to bring a sleeping bag. No, wait, I didn't do that either.
Yeah, we did not put it on the community post, but that's okay because very few people see that. And the people that probably saw it probably knew that we weren't available because we were camping.
Give away our secrets to subscriber count.
Right, exactly. At any rate, so we're gonna do the shooting the Poodoo today and talk about last week's Ahsoka, even though tomorrow is a brand new one.
Right. Wonderful.
And so without further ado, this is Breaking Points, Crystal and Sagar, and again, they're gonna talk about arms dealing and the Ukraine.
Last week, we brought you the news that President Zelensky had fired the defense minister over corruption. We're apparently allowed to talk about corruption in Ukraine now. And the New York Times, because they've gotten their marching orders now that they're allowed to talk about it, are giving us an even better insight into what this looks like. It's effectively like the plot of the War Dogs movie or of Lord of War. Crazy mercenaries who are very unscrupulous are getting hundreds of millions of dollars from the U.S. government on their ability to procure weapons and pump them into the Ukraine conflict. Let's put this up there on the screen. This is just one view. Remember, this is just one, 20-something months or so into the conflict. They look at Florida-based arms contractor. His name is Mark Morales.
We're talking about the war like it's a toddler. 20 months into the war. How old your kid? Oh, he's 20 months old.
When do you start using years, right?
Years, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's definitely the agreed upon time.
Regaled people with stories on his new $10 million yacht called Trigger Happy, Crystal, that manages his company's 9-digit portfolio. Said portfolio includes like hundreds of millions of dollars that are given to Mr. Morales. They have awarded his company approximately $1 billion in contracts, mostly for ammunition. Records show he has built roughly $200 million side business just selling to the Ukrainians directly. He employs multiple Ukrainian officials, some of whom are pictured there. One of them literally a former defense ministry advisor. I mean, why would you employ such a person, right? Whenever you're trying to sell weapons to the government. But the thing I love about Mr. Morales is that, quote, the Justice Department indicted him in 2009 on conspiracy of money laundering charges after it said he was caught on tape discussing methods for paying bribes to foreign officials. Quote, this is what he said, "You just got to be smarter than the government," Mr. Morales said on one recording. Ultimately, FBI agents badly botched the case and prosecutors had to drop charges, so he's not been convicted. He stands innocent of the charges in the eyes of the law. But what they really go into with Mr. Morales, and again, we're using him just as a stand-in for how many, there's probably dozens of these types of guys who are operating.
Side note, I think this guy puts like tooth whitener in his sausage or something like that. Because his teeth.
Sagar?
Yeah, his teeth are ridiculously white.
Yeah, probably.
Inside of Ukraine is these guys were instrumental in the Syria and Afghan conflict. They have deep and shady ties for ammo dealers all across the world. They can snap their fingers and they can get a plane full of ammunition. And the Pentagon was like, hey, the guy can get the job done, so we're just going to pump money, into his pockets, and it doesn't really matter where it's coming from or what's going on or where this money is doing or who exactly he's paying inside of the country. And it's just so obvious. I mean, one of the reasons they tried to indict him in 2009 is because that directly violates the Foreign and Corrupt Practices Act that the United States government has in place, in which U.S. businesses are not supposed to be bribing foreign officials or engage in any of this corruption to procure business. And that's
don't bribe foreign officials, bribe domestic officials.
Specifically would be a violation, a business violation in terms of that revenue. But when that revenue is directly based on the government itself, they're obviously looking the other way. So I thought this was just a perfect example of, now it's 20-something months into the conflict. The Biden administration is on the verge of sending long-range missiles to Ukraine, of which they directly had said before it would escalate the conflict. And we don't have enough said missiles, because if we ever get into a conflict, we may need them. Of course, I've said this before, on a long enough timeline, Ukraine always get what it wants. But, it's people like Mr. Morales who are the go-tos between these. It's not just a direct arms transfer. It's we take the money, we give it to people like him. He gets it from God knows where, and then he gives it to Ukraine, and he's making a very tidy little profit, enough to get a $10 million yacht in Florida. Must be nice. It's nice.
Is that it? Yeah.
Must be nice.
Must be nice. I would like even $1 million yacht, or just not a yacht at all.
Yeah.
Well, as we found out, ammo costs are ridiculous.
Yeah. Yes.
Like,
well, I knew ammo costs were ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I didn't know they were that crazy.
Maybe as it became apparent how quickly you can burn through, because if you're like, oh, ammo's so expensive, I spent $100 on ammo, you're like, oh, that's like, buying $100 worth of beer. It's not an infinite amount of beer, but like, it's a few days, and it's like, no, dude, fucking hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of ammo can be shot in, especially by several people, in like a matter of fucking less than an hour.
Yeah, and that was the main thing, is we were also just kind of like shooting for fun, taking our time, whatnot. We're not having to like lay down covering fire to make sure that our buddy doesn't die or anything like that.
Right.
Like, you can lay down hundreds of rounds just to make sure people get shot at a little less.
Yeah, I think the quantities the military is buying, they're probably significantly cheaper than the public can get them. But
true, yeah.
I have no fucking clue. I don't buy weapons for the military, so I don't know what wholesale would look like.
That's why you're not a millionaire. Got to start doing some warlord shit.
Hey, man, I was talking about drones, not like necessarily military drones, but just various other government contracts, whether that's like forestry or agriculture or whatever, like getting into fucking drones.
Yeah,
man,
absolutely.
Let's see. So anyway, like I thought that was interesting too, because he mentioned two movies that I like both of those movies a lot. Lord of War has Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And it's fucking rad. And then Jesus, War Dogs or Dogs of War, what was it called?
I think it was War Dogs.
Yeah, that's the one with Jonah Hill, right?
I've never seen it, but that sounds right.
Yeah, and theirs is the Iraq War, I think.
Yeah.
And it's based on a true story too. And so they just like, get a couple small government contracts and just make it up. Like they just apply for the contracts and they get it, and then they just make it up and make it work. And then they're like, oh my God, like we can actually do this. And then they start moving. And eventually at the end of the movie, they lost their ability to have contracts for all of like 7 years or whatever it was, because the government found out they were buying them from sources that had like US had sanctions on.
Oh, okay.
They're basically bypassing like legal restrictions. At any rate, I thought it interesting because I'm pretty sure in War Dogs, and I know for certain in Lord of War, that Ukrainian arms dealers were featured in both those movies because it's so goddamn common that it like permeates pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked many episodes ago about Ukraine being like the international pass through for illicit arms.
Yeah. Things come in and you lose track of them, and then they are gone.
Yep, exactly.
Who knows?
And this is long before 2014 and before this most recent phase of the conflict began. At any rate, yeah, interesting. Just fucking crazy. $1 billion fucking bucks.
And you know, when you get to that high amount of money, a yacht seems like a reasonable purchase because, you know, what else are you going to spend it on? You've already got all your food, electricity, you know, necessities taken care of. What else are you going to put it at? You know?
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I never had that much money, so I honestly don't know what I would do.
Right.
Buying a boat is not my thing. I mean, we had a boat at the lake when we went camping, and like I had very little desire to be on it.
Yeah, I don't either. I was talking with the wife about it because we've talked about in our search for like where to live and all that. We were like, oh man, what about like a houseboat? Yeah, like on a lake or something like that. And I was like, yeah, and I was like, on a lake, no, like, you know, then your options really are typically you are going to be paying a lot, you know, fee to park at a dock, and so like it's just like an HOA or you know renting for your mobile home. You'll never own it. You're constantly paying it. It never goes away. And so like
really
unless you can get
it's just a parking spot.
Yeah, and so unless you can get like some really cheap land that includes a place to you know have your boat, like you're kind of screwed, and then you don't have electricity or anything like that. And then being on the water is dangerous at literally all times. If you're near to the shore, then you got the rocks you got to worry about hitting, and if you're out to sea, you got to worry about a wave bigger than you've ever seen just capsizing you.
Yeah, my aunt's third husband, fourth husband, one of her husbands, lived on a houseboat, and I was talking to my uncle Randy about it, and he was just like, "This is the way to do it," because like the boat had been paid off for a long time, and you're right, it is like a mobile home park. You have monthly expenses, but like that covers like you know some things like electrical hookups
and typically dumping and fresh water,
also security, right? Gates and other things, you know, various probably additionally access to a network of skilled tradesmen and you know craftsmen or whatever if you need repairs. And then and he's I think he said it was like $500 and he was berthed in. Oh, I forget where it was. I think it might have been Long Beach, but it might have been a little further south on the coast. Like maybe in Orange County. I'm not sure.
That's a good area, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, and I want to say he said that it was like $400 or $500 a month. Like you can't, you know, this is where rent for a 2-bedroom 1-bath apartment would be like
$2,400.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say like $2,000 to $2,500 or whatever. Yeah, so $500 a month for you know a place to park with some amenities and infrastructure for, and you know your boat payment, whatever that might have been 10 or 15 years earlier. Yeah, it's a fairly cheap way. I mean, it's not the same as an apartment, right? Like, also you're like a lot farther from shit. When you want to do shit, you're like usually several miles further because you're out at the edge of the water.
Yeah, and that tends to be a very congested area.
Yeah,
in terms of traffic.
Not sure how we got on houseboats, but yachts, buying yachts, rich people buying yachts. Yeah, not the first thing I do, even if I was super wealthy.
Yeah, big investment, doesn't keep its value very well. Not smart.
Well, and I don't like water, and if you want to fucking impress people partying, it doesn't have to be on the water.
Right.
Like some people would be impressed by that, but you can impress people, you know,
with a lot of things.
Like having a sweet clubhouse at a ranch.
Yeah.
Right. Like pool tables and fucking shady spots to fucking, you know, beat the heat and drink fucking beers or whatever.
Go-go cages.
Yeah, exactly. Go-go dancer cages. Whatever, man. Whatever.
I could not believe they had
ring.
I'd never seen a go-go cage until that one bar in Chico. Can't remember the name of it. But, yeah, it's one of the ones that has the entry fee. Then they have the go-go dancers. I'm just like, okay, weird.
Yeah, hear that. All right, let's go through this article. Title is and this is in phys.org, right?
Yes.
Yeah. New computational tool finds hot spots where compounding environmental and economic risks converge. It's like that headline alone, you read that and you're like, yeah, no fucking shit. Like, you don't need computers to tell you where there's environmental and economic risk hotspots.
Yes, but this does it faster and more accurately, and you can choose all the
Right.
factors you
Data
want.
visualization is also,
Yeah.
it's more than understand. Sorry, I got out of focus there.
Okay.
It's more than about, just knowing that is a pattern.
Yeah.
And more about like, hey, we can now visualize this pattern in a way that can assist us in making decisions.
All the better to gentrify you by.
All the better. Ooh, I like your data. All the better to gentrify you with. And so this is an article by Mark Dwartzen.
You?
And the subtitle is a.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. A computational tool developed by researchers at the MIT Joint Program on the Science and Policy of Global Change pinpoints specific counties within the United States that are particularly vulnerable. So this goes down to county level data, which is pretty convenient because a lot of GIS data sets are at the county level.
Yeah. It's a pretty impressive
either the
map.
Census block or the county level. And guess what you can do when you have census blocks? Scale that to county.
Oh, look where there's no data. Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Alaska. No data whatsoever. That's weird. Like, I understand those are not part of the continental United States.
No data, or do you think that because Alaska and Hawaii are under similar statistical keeping guidelines? But I'm wondering almost if they're just because they included them on there.
Yeah,
why they were going to do that and have the data, they'd color code it. Shit.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's fucking dumb.
Fuck's up with that?
So I just want to point out here, I always talk about moving to the Pacific Northwest, or specifically the north coast of California. Mendocino, Humboldt counties, maybe even Sonoma County. But on the in the rain belt still.
Yeah.
They're relatively low. Yep. Yes, low to medium, right?
Yeah, these lighter blue colors aren't that great. So I mean, like, you're talking about somewhere up in here, I would hope. Hopefully not here. Or where
look at that real big old dark red spot.
Look, the Central Valley of California,
where
shit doth sucketh all of the time. Oh, look at the place I want to move to. Even I do find that funny. Like, the more desirable areas in terms of like population density and all that stuff are still like low relative risk. And if you're willing to move up like near Canada, it's like, oh yeah, it's fucking perfect up there.
Okay, so this is not. This I don't think is actually an aggregate of that whole.
No, this is only the airborne particulate. Yeah, and so like from fires and shit like that, and so like where things don't burn, it's not a problem. I actually did. Let me see. I did one that took into account all the factors.
Oh, nice.
You pulled it up. A bit more like this. Awesome. Yeah, it looks a bit more like this.
I forgot we put it in there because we wanted to play with the tool.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I just fucking checkboxed every little thing. But if you're talking about like these are all economic and environmental shit, and then this
what are our options here?
All right, so let me get it all unchecked. I wonder if I can just hit F5. Boop. Yes, I can. Okay, there we go. This is airborne particulate matter, which is just like another way of saying fires, and you will notice
not necessarily because they're talking about like the particulate from industrial part, right? The coast of Texas is going to be the oil industry, right? The Rust Belt, the kind of Ohio Valley, and all those places where like industrial pollution settles, but also wildfire smoke from Canada, obviously.
And so if you're talking about water stress, that's one we talk about frequently, and it's part of my reason to move. And you add that into the particulate matter, because I think that those are both pretty important. And I like this. You can weight them.
Yeah, let's weight airborne particulate a little lower.
Okay, let's go down to 0.5
like 50 or half.
Let's say, And water stress, if you consider that to be most important,
I
then
would say.
yeah. So there's very few areas in California that are even halfway decent, and they're mostly up in the mountains where like there's not a lot of like investment and transportation. Roads get washed out a lot, stuff like that.
Oh, and it's fucking frozen for like a big ass chunk of
Right.
the year.
Yeah. We were up near Donner Pass, earlier. If you're unfamiliar with Donner Pass, where the fuck have you been? It's where all the people ate each other. Num num, human bones.
Nom nom, baby.
Yeah, man. You can
Yeah, no,
save it
that's
and it's in
Sierra
stock.
County. That's like 6,500 feet. Like that's frozen a big chunk of the year.
Yeah. And then you got all the other places. There you go, Sierra. Boom. And even that is just like a little light blue here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it
Not
looks like when
super
you're
water
talking.
stressed.
And then water quality. That's an interesting one, because then you start to see some of these other areas that were a little higher go worse. Still pretty good up in the untouched areas, Humboldt County, Del Norte, etc.
Yeah. Can you toggle water quality off?
Off, yeah.
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 No, back on.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at.
You see where they grow corn and fucking soy and shit? It gets a lot darker in the Midwest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When you wait for that, right? And
Yeah, that's true.
I would say water stress, water quality is a little less important than not having water.
Yeah, I'd say 0.7, 0.8.
75%. There you go.
Yeah.
Flood risk, let's skip that. Highly erodible. Is that what it says?
Yeah. Highly erodible cropland. I mean, in theory, you could not worry about that too much with like some changes in the way you grow your crops.
No. But I'm just thinking about economic stressors as shit hits the fan.
Okay.
And climate change and drought and shit. I would weight that 75%.
It's only point or 0.1 increments.
0.1.
0.7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about, when I say 3/4, I mean 0.7 probably.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what land disturbance is. It doesn't really describe it.
Let's leave that off, because that could have various. That means like cutting a forest down, or like paving over a grassland to put a mall or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Employment in fossil fuels. I think that's pretty important. But like, let's put it down there, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then
You can turn that off. That might not even affect what we're trying to do here. Yeah, not really. You leave it off.
Yeah. Makes everything a little bit better, actually.
Wildfire risk, I would put on and then turn it up a little bit.
It's already at max.
Max. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And then
endangered species. Who cares about that?
Yeah, maybe not.
The one that interests me is this population under 18. Because that's basically saying, like, where do you have the future workers?
Yeah, and also, I wish there was an easy way to toggle off all data but that point, so you can kind of like see the change.
Yeah. All I can do is hit refresh.
Yeah, because I would say people under 18 would say like these are kind of like all stressors and a likelihood of experiencing that stressor over some kind of unit of time.
Yeah.
Arbitrary unit of time, of course, right? Like, I think seeing who is under 18 or under 30, if they had it, they don't have it.
They don't. No.
That's those are the people who are going to have most of their lives ahead of them in this scenario. Right. Like, yeah, I guess you could say old people are vulnerable, but guess what? Like, old people already got to live their lives.
Yeah.
It sucks that 20-year-olds are like, oh, fuck, this situation is fucked, but I can't really do anything because, like, we've squandered all these, resources and pumped all this pollution into the environment and into the atmosphere. And, like, we've expended the economy and the empires in collapse, and the whole fucking global order is like changing and going to affect like my quality of life, which is, a good thing in many ways, but also they, they're not going to have the same level of comfort as their parents did or their grandparents did. And they get to inherit this fucking mess.
The thing that interests me about the population under 18 as well is that the snapshot of areas that are probably going to be experiencing the what is it called, bedroom community effect, where like they
Yeah.
require people to commute into that area in order to provide the needed services, and like most of the time that's due to people not being able to afford to live there, once you reach adulthood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could be like a little telling statistic all on its own.
Yeah, it looks like we're in a pretty shitty place, but I don't
We
know.
are.
This summer, this spring and summer and this last winter
Mm.
kind of like trimmed a lot of my anxiety off. I was
Well,
like,
also,
wow, this was really fucking nice. If
1 year,
climate change,
huh?
well, I mean, it means there's a possibility that there's this in our future, right?
That's
Like,
true. Yeah, yeah.
because at some point in the state's history, like, fucking, there were trees like everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible that we could like rob all the nice blue parts from up here and like start shifting them down here, or just everything changes completely. Because the only thing I've ever heard about like, hey, the climate's getting warmer, shouldn't that evaporate more water from the ocean and cause more rain? Is that I couldn't find the reason why, but basically, cloud formation is halted in very not halted, but impeded in very high carbon situations, and I don't know the reason for that. I never looked into it further, but like that was just an interesting concept for me to think about a little bit. Was like, okay, cool. So like, what seems like a solution to the problem, kind of built into the thermostat of the world, it would be like hotter means more water vapor in the air. Means ideally, reflecting more, your radiation away from the planet. But
Mhm.
ultimately, it sounds like that's not the case, and it actually just stays in the atmosphere as vapor and never comes back down. Yeah,
Okay. Well, yeah, that's an interesting tool. It's called stress.
yeah,
Um, and the primary purpose of developing the tool is to look at economic and ecological factors and where they converge. And I think that it depends, right? Like it sucks too because like there's a lot of people and a lot of our food, especially,
hmm
comes from that region that's in red in California.
oh yeah, yeah.
Like that's I don't want to venture a statistic, but it's like it was like something like 60 or 70% of like all the fresh fruits and vegetables in the US come from California or some shit like that. You looking for that statistic?
hmm
It's a lot. And it may,
25% of the nation's fruits, nuts, and other food products
okay,
is contained in the
25%.
Central Valley of California. It makes up 1% of the landmass and provides 25% of the fruits,
Okay.
nuts, and other food products.
That's just the Central Valley.
Yeah, it's just this
I mean, which is
region in red, basically.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And so California is definitely not more than 50 because the Central Valley makes up most of it.
It does.
There's quite a bit of other economically productive regions, wine, cattle, the Central Coast,
Yeah.
artichokes and garlic, right, are two well-known commodity crops that we grow. And
Avocados.
yeah, avocado, citrus, tomatoes, and a lot of that's grown in the Central Valley, but not all of it. And then in the foothills, there's like olives. There's a shit ton of cattle. We have a lot of fucking cows, and a lot of those cows are not really. They spend the end of their lives in the Central Valley on a fucking feedlot.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like they spend most of their lives, and the cow calf operators are all mostly in the foothills.
hmm
There's some down here in the valley. At any rate, that's a cool tool. Y'all should check it out. It'll be in the show notes. Let's talk about
Yeah.
Ahsoka because we got about 20 minutes left.
Yeah. I just wanted to do one more quick thing because
Sure.
the wife showed me this, and I was like, we have come full circle. These are the iPhone earbuds or whatever they're called, AirPods. There you go. And this is a nice little braided thing that you can attach to it, and you can like, it still fits around your ear, and it goes around your neck. and everything.
So you don't
To
lose
make sure
them?
you don't lose them. Kind of like the earbuds that had cables that just plugged into your phone not too long ago. Yeah, it's kind of stupid. We're like, wires are terrible, but now I need wires to hold these around my neck so I don't fucking
Hey,
lose
man.
them.
I wish. Because like I'll put in my earbuds when I'm working outside, and like I don't want to jam them in.
Right.
If I had like just a band, like a comfortable band, even
have you
cup
ever
that just
seen
go-
the ones that do that? They like wrap around the back of your head. It's all one piece.
Yeah, you know,
I
to be
had those.
completely honest. Yeah.
I had them. They're pretty awesome. But
Yeah, I don't really buy stuff. They were a gift.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you know, I wish they did because they fall out of my ears, and I'm like working, and I'm like, shit. Now it's all fucking dirty.
Yeah.
I like trying to dust it off so I can stick it back down my ear hole.
My favorite ones were definitely the one piece ones that go around the back of the head. I love those things. They're cool. And
Yeah,
then
I remember the old fucking flat ones with like the shitty foam and they're plastic underneath. And they were never really wide enough for a wide fucking head.
Yeah.
So they were always like squeezing down.
Yeah.
Because they were stretched out and then pushed, and then your fucking ears get all fucking bruised if you wear them too long.
I was so pissed off because like
that's the ones the school had too.
Yeah. I lost those because I took them to the gym and they specifically advertised them as sweat and water resistant. One time at the gym, lying on my back doing exercises, and they fucking broke. I was like, God, should have known better. Shouldn't have trusted it.
Yep. All right,
but Ahsoka. Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Well,
episode 4.
So episode 4, Fallen Jedi. The first thing I want to talk about is just a little continuity error that I noticed, and during the fight between spoilers, for something that happened almost a week ago, Sabine and Shin. Shin says, "You will regret this a decision," after Sabine tells Ahsoka to go after the map, and she has her little Padawan braid coming over her right shoulder. And then the camera switches to Sabine, and she kind of like backs up and gets ready to defend, and then it switches back to Shin, and it's gone. Not moved over to the other side, gone. But like her lightsaber, the red lightsaber, on the screen when you're looking at Sabine, didn't move, didn't do any flourishes or anything like that. This thing that had been hanging there just disappeared. And so, I'm proud because I don't normally catch continuity errors, but I got one. Yeah, I got one.
I didn't catch that. It's possible that it just wasn't on screen. You think that like
it's pretty long. It's longer than her normal hair.
You're thinking that maybe she loses her, or she gets to remove her braid at some point during the show, and
no,
they had to go back and do a reshoot. And
yes, that is
and
possible.
she didn't have it.
Yes,
that would have been a hairstyle when Obi-Wan did his. He
Yeah,
shaved his head and left the braid.
yeah, and that's what I think happened. Is I think it was like, oh, we need to do a reshoot or a second take or something like that, and like it moved over and just nobody noticed. That's why they're called continuity errors. It's like it's not talking about the continuity of the show; it's talking about the continuity of the filming.
Well, right, and we discussed the one in the big one in the Mandalorian, right? Where like,
remind me,
Axe Woves, the character that was much more prevalent in season 3,
the big old dude in the really heavy armor.
No, not him.
Yeah.
The other guy that was part of Bo-Katan's team. And when
they go to steal,
when they go to steal that ship, apparently originally he was supposed to do the heroic like suicidal thing and run down the. Remember, I mean, I know my reaction when like he's running down the hall with like, or Mando's running down the hall of the ship getting shot while he's like holding grenades trying to get far enough to throw the grenade.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when I saw that scene, I was like, that's fucking dumb. Like he probably would have died. Like that's what do you ever call that? Plot armor, right? Like,
yeah.
They want
Beskar.
No, but still, right?
Yeah,
like it can only go so far when you're like getting shot at like that.
Yeah,
it's meant to like, yeah. Anyway, moral of the story is, I thought that was dumb. Well, it was supposed to be shown as dumb, and it was supposed to be shown to be kind of like a suicidal or act by Axe Woves, and then they decided later that they wanted Din Djarin because since he's the hero, he had to do the heroic thing. But if you notice in the next scene, he is not there. at all. He was supposed to die there, so he's there up until that. But when they like take the bridge and all that stuff, he's not shown again because he was supposed to have died. And then they went back and they're like, no, Mando needs to do this, but they didn't reshoot him into the final scenes of the episode or in the final act in the end of season 2 when it was just whatever Casca Reeves and Bo-Katan, and he wasn't there because he died. But they changed it when they were done filming and they were doing post editing or whatever. Or they might have gone and done a reshoot again, right? With Din Djarin.
They needed to sell more action figures of Axwolf, I guess. I don't know.
No. I'm just saying they make production decisions.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And they decide to change things, and you'll catch little things if you pay attention. So good eyeball on that one. Yeah. I thought in that fight. So overall, I think that I really fucking love this episode. She used little wrist rockets before she used a little fucking like ensnaring tether or whatever.
I don't think she did. Not against Shin.
Oh, okay.
Or if she did, she
against
missed.
One of the other.
It was against the droids. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, I don't think it was a droid, but it was against the mercenaries. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was cool. Like they kind of worked together, and it was like a cool action sequence. They kind of like also lends itself towards like how the characters are interacting.
Yeah. Then, of course, the ham-fisted line by Hu Yang, like, you should stick together. You were always better together.
Well, that's, I mean, if you like to kind of conceive of these as like live play RPGs, that's the equivalent of don't split the party.
Yeah.
Right?
You never split the party, except when you always split the party.
Except when you always split the party, because there's too much to accomplish.
Yeah.
At any rate, there was no fucking reason at all for that, because it would have taken them maybe a minute or two, right?
Are you talking about together? Yeah, it would have taken almost no time. Would have just been like
far more fucking
skilled. Yeah.
In fact, she's, in that battle with Baylan later, like clearly, like I think they were trying to convey that her head's all fucked up, right?
Yeah.
She was using the dark side, shit like that.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, man. It was cool. I thought it was dumb that Sabine's like shooting at her.
Yeah, like you pointed that out, and I went ahead and I counted, and I was like, oh man, she put 10 shots center mass on Baylan. She's a Mandalorian. He's had a little bit of Jedi training. Yeah, no. When it's later in the episode after they get to the map. After Ahsoka falls off the cliff. Sabine puts 10 shots center mass at Baylan. He deflects them all handily. And I'm like, you're a Mandalorian. You got Jedi training. You couldn't have shot him like in the leg, in the arm, in the fucking crotch, anywhere but center mass where he's like, meh.
Yeah, at least make him work to reflect.
Yeah.
Like, and you have 2 pistols.
Yeah.
So you can go low and high.
If I could throw that map and be like, she had the map in her hand, so she wasn't, using both. But like, fucking throw that thing behind you, because if he gets past you, he's gonna get it anyway. So fucking toss that shit behind you and just.
And I don't really think I don't like that turn at all. Like,
her doing the weird turning everything over and just being like, my family. Oh no.
Yeah, I do think I like a lot, and one of the reasons I really like this episode is because like. Kind of like a little bit like the last episode, they filled in all the stuff that like the first 2 episodes kind of like set up, and we all kind of suspected was there, but like at least you now know why. Like I still don't know how Ahsoka and Sabine got to training in the first place and became friends or had established this master apprentice relationship. But at least we know now what soured it, which is nice. I like to know why they had a falling out,
right?
Because that wasn't apparent in the first 3. How many minutes was that? The first 3 episodes is probably an hour and 20 minutes.
50, 40. So it'd be 80, 130 minus about 15 minutes for 115 minutes or so.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about, 120. So yeah. So a little less. Yeah. A little less than 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
That's about a movie length.
Yeah. And we don't know why they're mad at each other.
Yeah, and then they finally fit it in that, or apparently, and I've seen some speculation that like, Balin has a somewhat rare force ability of precognition, or like basically being able to see shit before it happens.
Yeah.
And then also like read minds like very smoothly and non-invasively. Because
I got that impression when he was fighting fighting Ahsoka, and she had the map behind him. I got the impression he just kind of like reached out towards her and was like, "Nah, she's bluffing."
She's bluffing what?
Bluffing about shooting the map. Like I got the impression, that like because the fight in between him and Ahsoka paused for a good like 6 seconds or so. And then I got the impression that he was like kind of like reaching out and being like, "Nah, she's full of shit." And then Ahsoka was also like, "Oh no, she's full of shit." Yeah.
Oh, when she said she would follow through and destroy the map.
Yeah. And Ahsoka's like, "Fuck, she's full of shit."
Speaking of that kind of now that they've moved from near, because it basically took place near the ship and at the Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Right. I did want to mention, like, I didn't really like the whole like Sabine. It didn't. I think Natasha Liu Bordizzo has been doing a fantastic job with Sabine. I was not convinced that she was really like felt that pull. Ray Stevenson did a fucking fantastic job with the character. I think that he was persuasive. I think the lines were delivered in a really kind of like calmly menacing way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It felt like a really cool scene, but that kind of like it was almost as in like almost like railroading, if we were again to compare it to RPGs.
Yeah.
It was like, would they make that decision, or could there have been a way where they made that decision without ever like compromising like their morality, which is what's implied by that, right? Turning evil because you have an irrational attachment to someone, which is fucking Anakin, right?
Right.
And I hope they explore it now that he's in a hallucination. I've heard it described as
so yeah, go ahead.
World Between Worlds is a hallucination. But before that, if you want to talk about that, because that's kind of a bigger, headier topic and more controversial, I think I did want to point out that like Hera, like big deviation from her character. Like throughout Rebels, she was like, "No, this is what we do. We have our orders. We're part of something bigger. We need to follow through on what we're told to do, whether we agree with it or not."
Right. And
Because we're
she's
part
like,
of a bigger thing. And then she's just like, and then they like make these fucking childish quips like, "Why are you allowed to disobey orders but not me?" It's because I'm the adult, like, or whatever she fucking said. Or
when you're a general, you can break the rules too.
Which is not fucking how it works. And I hope
it is, though.
No, it is. It isn't. And I hope that instead of just being like, "Oh, the New Republic politicians, they're inept. They just went back to doing their self-dealing, and they realized that it was politically more advantageous for them to like avoid conflict because people were so sick of conflict, and they were inept, and they let all the around like they've shown in this show, and they showed also in the Mandalorian in the Coruscant arcs with what's her name and what's his name, the doctor and the operative or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
I forget their names.
Minor character number
right?
6.
Like there's that whole Coruscant arc with the doctor.
Yeah, the guy with the glasses, and
which I thought was a fantastic episode.
The mind thing, and he gets his mind.
Yeah, he got mind flared.
Yeah.
So they've done a pretty good job showing the New Republic as inept, but like also like this is kind of saying no, it's also the military's fault because they kept acting like they didn't need to be constrained by rules. They kept acting like rebels when like the whole point in getting rid of the empire is to bring like civil government back, right? Instead of just like might is right philosophy.
But in terms of strategic moments when high-ranking officials have disobeyed orders to miraculous ends, like it actually happens quite often, where a general's just like, "No, that's a stupid order. I'm going to lose all my forces, and it doesn't support anything."
Sure. Okay. I guess disobeying orders for a general is not inconceivable, but what she did was kind of flippant, and I think they did a good job of showing it's flippant. And they also intentionally chose to have that space sequence. Clearly, they probably didn't have the budget for like a minor space battle, and they did the space battle last episode.
They
did.
It
would have been
It
a
was
lot cooler with some X-Wings, right?
as soon as they dropped out of hyperspace, I was like, fire some missiles! Like, don't fucking wait. As soon as
At
you're
any
within
rate,
range.
I thought they did make it a point to show she killed 2 fucking people. 2 out of 5. Right?
Oh yeah, she's in some shit when she gets back. Of course,
and I hope she gets either demoted or just outright like kicked out. And I mean, I don't hope that, but I hope there is some kind of consequence.
There's nothing stopping it, is the thing. Like, have you seen Hera in anything else? No, she was Rebels. Now that's it. So anything could happen.
That's true. Right. She was a general in the rebellion, and she could be, this person here, and maybe she goes off and never comes back. That's why, or maybe they might tell some stories where she interacts with Leia without showing it, because they think they're going to just move completely beyond legacy characters. But
so I don't know what they're going to do with Jason, but if he follows in his namesake's footsteps, not a namesake in canon, but in
Greek,
no, Legends. Jason was one of the sons of Solo and Morgana.
Organa.
He was I think the oldest.
And
he was a pair of twins, and it means healer and a binder and everything. But like he, in that canon, he took off and basically like delved in, much like Luke did. He delved into the knowledge of the dark side, and he became, I think it was like Darth Cade. And he basically like came back and did a whole bunch of shit that was viewed as very, very negative. But he's just like, no, I have a grand plan, and it's going to be great. You guys stop fighting me on this. Like, are things great right now, or are we about to, be invaded from a side that you don't see? And it turned out that was where the Yuzan Vong, came from. It's like he had delved into the Force, and he had seen this oncoming storm, and was just like, okay, cool, we gotta get ready, and no one believes me, so I'm going to do it on my own. And so I wonder if he'll follow in that, namesake. But he's so young, like it's going to be years before we ever find out and get any closure on that. And Disney will probably give up on superhero and Star Wars.
They might be able to tie it into a handful of shows in a big cinematic, like coming together kind of bullshit, like Endgame type shit. And they might be able to do it. He might be able to do it as a young person too, right? Because like, if that's the family and the ties between Hera and with Kanan and all that stuff, that like, if it came down to it, like,
how old is supposed to be?
Sabine and Ezra and everybody else would probably like, it's kind of like whatever, like, right? The kid being like, why can't we all just get along?
Yeah, he's supposed to be 11 or 12, so yeah, it could absolutely be like, oh, in a few years he's like, like Ahsoka was in the Clone Wars. He's teenage prodigy.
100%. We don't have a ton of time left, but
we do not.
One thing I do want to get your grade on a 1 to 10 scale, and also you want to talk about the World Between Worlds.
No, well, yeah, okay. I do. But grade 1 to 10. I mean, of the episodes that have been out so far, obviously a 10. Of an overall show, probably like a 6 or a 7.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Of all the Star Wars shows?
Of all the Star Wars shows, I'd say no. Then it's more like an 8 or a 9. I'm just talking about TV in general.
Yeah. I only grade to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, no, not necessarily. I grade it for what it is, but like, I'm not going to like, oh my god, this is the best show ever, right? Like,
graded against other Star Wars, I give it an easy 7 or an 8. They did still. So one thing I read was Rosario Dawson was talking about the training necessary, and she was like, I was really worried about the role because I'm in my 40s. I'm not exactly fit. I don't like me and exercise are not friends, I think is what she said. But it was basically like, but I read through, a lot of the books, that have been made about her. I've watched the cartoon series, I like repeatedly, and she's just like, I really wanted to do the character justice, and so she, worked on it, and the stunt double and everything. You know, they worked on making it or come to life, but like recognized the limitations as well. You know, when talking with the stunt coordinator, and so they were like, "Yeah, we're probably not going to do a whole lot of like backflips and shit, like you know, Sabine or when you know, like Ahsoka did when she was much younger. You know, where she was like kind of verging on like a Taru technique. You know, where she's just like pew 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 bouncing all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think that given that they wanted to do more of the acrobatics but couldn't, I really wish they'd focused on the sword play more. And like spinning attacks are just this recurring uh, like offense. And everything I've seen and like you know heard about you know from the Hema people and the other you know sword fighting people, they're like a spinning attack not only doesn't garner you any benefit, it opens you up to attack.
Yeah.
And I was so upset because I was watching the fight in between Ahsoka and Balin again, and like rewound it, watched it again, rewound it, watched it again, and I was like, I don't think Balin does a spinning attack. Nope, there's one. Fuck. But like Ahsoka does several of them and opens herself up at many occasions. And like the only time that Balin does it is to gain ground forward. And it actually has like a reason to exist. It's not like him trying to pretend like he's gaining any strength from it, but it's actually him just moving forward and pressing the attack. Ozzy like literally like lunges forward with it. And that's moderately, you know, forgivable. But I really wish they'd work on all the sword fighting stuff with like real martial artists.
It's expensive. I imagine that it's expensive because every consultant that comes on to consult for the show is getting probably tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. I bet you could get it for real cheap from like a Star Wars fan.
Yeah. I mean, you also need professionals that know how to operate in that space.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I did like about the lightsaber fight is it seemed to me Ahsoka and Balin, because like, you know, I've said a few times Ahsoka is arguably like the best fucking arguably the best duelist after fucking Mace Windu got killed, right? And Anakin got condemned to his suit.
Yeah.
Like Luke Skywalker wasn't a fucking great duelist.
No.
Right? Like most of his fight and even beating Vader, like that was like psychological. Right?
Yeah.
Like he beat Vader psychologically, not really like in terms of I mean, he did beat him in swordplay, right? He cut his arm off, but like there was a lot going on in Vader's head that's not
didn't mean shit.
Yeah. And also Vader's fucking old and a machine or whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought she's arguably the best duelist. And I did really like that one of the ways that they established visually that these two individuals were both trained from this monastic order, the Jedi, in a variety of techniques. As it seemed to me, they were like the reason that fight kind of took a while to develop is because they kept fucking changing forms and like kept trying to like counteract each other.
Yeah, you know, he come in with the high guard and then switch over to you know, overhead, and both of those are like valid, you know, positions in sword fighting.
Right. Yeah, and just like they tested each other, and it was like smack, 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 and it was like, ooh, I need to respond to that movement because you know, and then snap, 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 and it was kind of cool. It was almost it kind of was conveying that like both of these individuals like have considerable experience in this art form, and are formidable opponents to each other.
Yeah,
and clearly, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say what impressed me is I don't think she ever pulled out her second saber.
Nope.
Yeah. And so that kind of made me question, like in the beginning, I was like, why is she not using it? And then she burnt her hand. And I'm like, well, of course she's not using it. But yeah, she never pulled it out. And that's like, you know, Jarkai is supposed to be her preferred technique. And so it was very interesting.
And again, that could have been an editing decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
She could have burned her hand right at the beginning. And they're like, ooh, you know what's better is that we have a kind of fight and then she grabs it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know because how it's done is like how it's like it makes more sense to do like the choreography stuff when you have the consultant on staff and you need a particular camera, right? That's not like for close-ups when like grabbing something, right? But you have the kind of longer shot and you need a camera and lenses that can take that movement and capture it clearly, right?
Yeah.
Like and so there's like a whole, I mean, filmmaking is fascinating to me, but there's like so many moving parts and like there's a lot of reasons why they could have done it in that way. Ray Stevenson and like lighting people and stuff because they were moving around the set, a lot of people wouldn't need to be involved for like a quick fucking 5 or 8 or 10-second sequence where she grabs the thing. Right, like none of those people needed to be there, so they could film all that stuff first. And they're like, "Oh, her hand is burnt," and then when they're putting it all together, they had her hand get burnt later, so she never used her second lightsaber even for a little bit, even though she didn't burn her hand until later.
I do wonder if she recognized, like, Balin's fighting reminds me of Anakin's fighting. I think he's using the same style. I think it's Form 5. I don't remember the name, but I'm pretty sure that they're using very similar techniques where the idea is you lure your opponent in and then you batter them down to ashes, basically. And so I think that she might have recognized that right away and just been like, two-weapon fighting isn't going to cut it here.
Yeah, it was an interesting fight sequence. Definitely not the worst. I would rate it. I rated it a 9. I rated the week before episode 3. I rated that a 7, and then the
Are you writing this down somewhere?
No, I just remember.
Oh, okay.
And then the first 2 episodes I graded together at a 6.5. So like this is arguably like 9 is pretty good. Like this was a pretty good episode overall. We're halfway through the season now. This show is definitely going to rank probably my favorite Star Wars because favorite live action Star Wars. After Andor. No. Andor will never be surpassed. I mean, not never, but like
unlikely
to be surpassed because like as much as I'm kind of excited for like the way that Leslie Headland approaches the Acolyte and having like new characters in a kind of a new era or an unexplored era, like I'm really excited for that. The fucking amount of like martial arts and fight choreography in that show that show's supposed to have is fucking excellent. But she's not probably as a good of a writer as Tony Gilroy. Like he's just fucking such a fucking good writer.
You know who we gave no credit to this episode so far?
Who?
Hu Yang.
Oh yeah, and Hu Yang's one of the best parts of the show. Little fucking.
Well, and then just his
fighting with his little arm, that was sick.
Well, and his instinct to realize like I'm in way over my fucking head. Help! Oh shit, no one's coming. Use the little arm. Pull the thing.
Like, pull the thing.
Very smart, very situationally aware. Very David Tennant.
And also it was really that little kind of just whatever 5 or 10 second sequence of them like grappling with each other was fucking sick.
It's always funny to watch droids fight because it's like clang, clang. It's like, is anything happening? I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought that was pretty good. He like had the hands come up and he was like punching it in the head.
Yeah.
They don't feel pain though. Like, I mean, you could hit it hard enough to like disrupt a circuit or something, I guess.
No, I mean, that's an excellent point. Is like, with the exception of like, oh, a part has been severed, there's no reason to include pain sensors. And so, yeah, absolutely. Just be like, whack, whack. Oh, I can't see things, quite so well because my head is turned to the side. But other than that, just.
I'm trying to bludgeon it until you fucking break it, basically.
Yeah.
Hu Yang was fucking badass, and he didn't have a huge rank. I'm not sure where they're going to go with the World Between Worlds. I don't think it's going to be time travel-y. I think she might have knocked her head, like got knocked out.
You know what I noticed is
she definitely survived the fall though, and that's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, if you turn on the subtitles, the
captions.
Yeah. The captions say Vader music or something like that.
Yeah, it did play the Vader theme. It kind of was going in the theme, and then the motif of the Imperial March played over. Yeah,
and then it's like, why is it episode 3 Anakin? Like, I don't understand. I mean, I guess that was what happened when he was a Force ghost in Return of the Jedi. So, like, maybe that's an explanation for it. But, the fact that they said, like, basically, Vader motif plays, it's like, no, we're dealing with deceit here. And you let us know.
Yeah, that's interesting because I saw that speculation too, that they're like, oh my God, she's going to have to fight Anakin again. And this time, because or he's going to try and lure her to the dark side or whatever. And he's there only because she tapped into the dark side when she was fighting. And I honestly think she got knocked out.
Yeah.
Sorry. She got knocked out. It's a hallucination. The reason that it's Clone Wars era or Revenge of the Sith Anakin is because that's her memory.
Right, exactly.
Even though she knew Anakin turned to Vader, like maybe that's why the motif played, but she's seeing him as she saw him the most, as was her mentor and friend, right?
Exactly,
like, not as the monster he became or whatever.
Precisely.
Pardon me. Yeah, and I'm curious where it's gonna go. I hope that this episode has a little bit of. I would like to have some like villain interactions with Sabine. They don't even have to get to their destination. In fact, I hope they don't get to their destination in the next episode. I hope they have some traveling through hyperspace conversations.
Oh yeah, well, psychological warfare.
Yeah, and remember at some point Sabine was much like Ahsoka was possessed by the brother in the Mortis arc.
Yeah.
Right, and it died.
Yeah.
And had to be resurrected.
Right.
Right. Much like that, Sabine was she was possessed by Night Sister demons.
Oh.
Which reminds me,
you have way more cartoon knowledge than I do.
Well, I mean, that was in Rebels when they were trying to, I think, figure out. I think this was after Maul died, and they were going there looking for something, or maybe it was no, it wasn't. It was I don't remember the exact sequence, but for whatever reason, they went to Dathomir and they found where Maul had been after he lost control of Crimson Dawn, and he'd kind of gone into like searching for artifacts and kinds of like mysteries and stuff like that, trying to uncover more about the Sith and the Night Sisters and other like the Force. Basically, he started to retired essentially to looking for stuff. That's why he was on Malachor when they found him. Like that's how far he had gotten. He was looking for a weapon, like to seek revenge, and that's as far as he got. And they found him, and he said when they got to Malachor, he's like, I need an apprentice. Like this, two have to go through this trial. And that's why he persuaded Ezra to help him do the thing at Malachor and unlock.
Oh yeah, with the Sith temple and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
How close was Malachor in canon?
I thought Malachor was a core world.
Yeah, well, like in Legends, it was covered in the Knights of the Old Republic game, and it was basically like blown to shit. And again, you know more about the cartoons than I do. Like it was literally a world that had like blown up and then kind of compressed back together because gravity, and so it was like horrible,
okay, that was kind of like legend stuff. The way they showed it in Rebels was they just went to a temple and there was like evidence like a great battle took place, like both the both sides of the battle were like frozen in stone, like by some kind of magic, like it was kind of like a
very different,
meant to be like a kind of catastrophism, kind of like what's that place, I keep wanting to say Vesuvius, but what the fucking
no, I mean, Mount Vesuvius is the one where you had the people who were basically vitrified.
Oh yeah. What was the name of the town though? Was the volcano was Vesuvius? And it was Pompeii, right? Yeah. So kind of like Pompeii, right? Like everything is frozen in time, and they're like, "Oh shit, there was like a huge battle here, blah blah." But they didn't go into like the planet got blown up and
how it got there.
They just showed up to the temple.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so at any rate, like Maul goes off to do that. And so I think that she just had her head knocked off. She's seeing a representation of Anakin. Yeah. I think she's going to go through some like a process of letting go of some of her guilt. For that, I hope that they do like some flashback sequences.
That would be interesting because I rewatched the Mortis arc and guilt was a huge part there because they kept trying, because the father and the son both kept talking to Anakin about his guilt and how it was holding him back, and he kind of needed to get over that.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so could be
that's parallels. An Easter egg you should share with one of the Easter egg people.
if it's at all related.
Oh no, I'm sure it is. I mean, guilt's just kind of like a general kind of theme in art and in literature, and so it's fair to explore it here. Clearly, she has some guilt. She had it in Rebels, right? She said she didn't want to train Grogu because
she wasn't a Jedi.
His attachments.
Yeah.
She didn't trust Sabine to make the right decisions going to Mandalore, apparently, to help like stop Gideon from the fucking Night of 1,000 Tears.
And apparently she was 100% fucking correct.
And the fusion bombing of fucking Mandalore that they spent a whole season of a whole season of Mandalorian exploring, which I think is a great way to tie it in without like all the endless fucking cameos. It's just good world building. It's like, oh, this happened, and here is this journey of this hero, and this other unsuspecting hero helping her, and all these other characters involved. Skinny Pete from Breaking Bad, right, was one of the Mandalorians. On one of the marooned ones, right, when they ran into like basically like a pirate ship.
Oh yeah, okay.
People who'd been the Skinny Pete was one of the Mandalorians there that had no armor.
Yeah.
At any rate, I think they explored it, and it was cool to be like, okay, here is the falling out. As Sabine wanted to be there to try and prevent that, and she couldn't be, and lost her whole fucking family because of it.
Yeah.
Right. And then Ahsoka, and she resented Ahsoka, so there's resentment there. Ahsoka probably feels guilty, knowing that Ahsoka maybe didn't think that like everyone was going to get wiped out when she said she couldn't go. Right. Like, and then there's guilt for Anakin, of course, still.
Yeah.
And all that. So I hope they explore that. I hope they do some kind of like exploring a little bit more for people who don't really know who Ahsoka is, and kind of like some flashbacks to kind of fill in some space.
Yeah.
Because everybody's gonna know who Anakin Skywalker is, right? Like everybody knows that, right? Like, I mean, most everybody that would know any of the live action stuff, or especially the live action movies, right? Like that's the kind of the basis of the canon is the 6 movies, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
In 9 movies. Yep, there he is, Skinny Pete.
In Mandalorian armor.
Yeah, he's got his Mandalorian armor, but then he has a Skinny Pete beanie.
Yep.
Photoshopped. That's fucking great.
I don't watch Breaking Bad, so I don't know, but yeah, like some of his pictures is like a normal human being. He looks like a tweaker.
Yeah. All right, I think we ran over hour and 15 at this point.
Quite a bit. So you know what we got to do?
Play that funky music.
Play that
Green Boy.
Funky music, Green Boy.
At any rate, this has been with Thunderous Applause, Shooting the Poodoo episode 31. We just talked about Ahsoka. I'm excited about tomorrow's episode. Again, I hope they don't get to their destination, because I think it's largely about the journey, although they better get to that fucking destination. But I do want to see
2 or 3 episodes from now.
I'd be okay with just one episode to pause, breathe, work out some of that shit, and then that I think it would be great to end tomorrow's episode with Thrawn, or potentially like them arriving, but not really explore any of it.
I want Sabine broken.
Broken?
Yeah. Well, like, she's a prisoner now. You know, she's already had her. She is no longer even able to lie to herself and say she's a good person. She did everything she did for selfish reasons. And I'm hoping that they kind of like point that out and make her feel bad about that and, you know, break her down.
She also thought Ahsoka was dead.
Yeah.
Just as Ahsoka thought she was dead. So there's that kind of weird, like,
duality
back and forth. And also like the guilt they feel, they both equally feel about different things and each other. Guilt and resentment, you know, those kinds of themes.
Very true.
But I did think it was a fantastic episode. I thought there was, of course, a lot that could have improved, but I thought the visuals were fucking cool. The action sequences were cool. Generally speaking, just like all of it as a package, the little bits of lore they've built on, and the time they took to have conversations and to let the villains have some fucking screen time. They are very well written villains. In fact, Star Wars has always had well written villains. I think, honestly, like General Grievous is probably the worst of the worst as far as like the non-cartoons are concerned.
Yeah, he wasn't well explained. Like people still think he's a droid.
Just there and he's gone. Like at least Count Dooku, like he was kind of almost like a henchman. At least Count Dooku, you know, they talk about being Yoda's apprentice and like him. He's or what does Kiadi Mundi say? He said he's a political idealist, not a murderer, right? Like. So there's like a kind of understanding of Dooku as a character that kind of is more fleshed out than Grievous. Grievous is a wasted villain, although
in the originals Clone Wars cartoons, he was like main antagonist. Yeah. Like
he was
Plo Koon shit himself.
Oh yeah,
barely got
they
away.
Were fucking terrified of him, and also like I've heard that was one of the best character introductions in like all of Star Wars.
Yeah,
it's just like they're all just like, oh my god, they're panicked, they're surrounded, and like all like 5 Jedi are all in the same fucking space together, and they're fucking terrified, being like, oh no, you know, like
who the fuck is he? Yeah.
At any rate, General Grievous is wasted, but I think Star Wars generally does villains pretty well.
Yeah.
And they've done these villains very well. In fact, that's part of the major problem of both Mandalorian, in my opinion, and Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett didn't have a villain. It just kept changing, and then it's like the Pikes, and it's like the Pikes is like an amorphous, like
drug dealing, slave trading.
Yeah, they're just bad because they do bad things, right? Like smuggle drugs, so they're bad, right? Like without any kind of like moral depth to them. Like I thought a better villain would have been the fucking Ithorian mayor, you know.
I gotta tell you though, I cannot wait to see where they go with Balin in season 2.
They won't go nowhere.
Damn it!
Yeah, it's a real fucking bummer, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Because he's a fucking fantastic villain.
Like, I have a feeling that over time we'll get like, you know, some releases about what their plans were for him. Unless, of course, season 1 ends and he's fucking killed. I don't know. See what happens. They might go back and like retroactively edit it. But I mean, like, maybe it'll get you released eventually. Like, hey, we were planning on doing this, that, and the other thing, and then life. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. They had some extra footage and shit that they were able to use for Leia in episode 9, right?
Yay.
This has been with Thunder's Applause. Shooting the Poodoo, episode 31. We talked about tools you can use to explore the intersection of ecology and economy.
Yeah.
We also talked a little bit about arms dealing and the intersection between our tax dollars and weapons of war.
And why you should be doing it.
And how you should be entrepreneurial and start your own weapons trafficking business.
Oh my god.
And it's fucking absurd. Yeah. It really is absurd.
It's so outside of the normal, you know, like it seems like something's dying, you know, when someone can get away with just bribing officials. But I can't think of what would die.
Liberty, with Thunder's Applause.
Later, y'all. Enjoy
Show
that.
Me that Yoda.
That funky
Grogu.
dancing you, baby you.